What's up, guys, and welcome back to INTHESHOPTV. So if you guys have been following along, what we did last time was create clearance for our drive shaft. We were afraid that our frame was going to hit and wasn't going to clear. So we cut the center cross member and welded in the drive shaft tunnel that we made. Guys, we've been working our way forward trying to prep this frame for paint. And a big part of doing that is looking at everything that we encounter from the rear forward and seeing if there's anything that we need to fix or repair before we're ready to start slapping some paint on it. The last thing I want to do is get this thing covered in nice looking paint and then have to start grinding it off because I need to weld something or bolt something on or drill holes or because I forgot something. And I'm sure that might still happen somewhere along the way, but we want to take as many steps as we can before we start painting this. So just now I noticed two things with our rack and pinion. Number one, it is way too close to our oil pan. If I ever have to drop that pan, I got about an 1/8 of an inch clearance, and that's just not enough for me. Number two, I think we're gonna be okay, but I don't wanna think, I wanna know. Where our steering shaft is gonna enter that rack and pinion, it's really kind of close to hitting the support for the engine mount. I think what we need to do is take this rack and pinion off, cut the brackets off of the cross member, modify them somehow so that we can tilt the rack and pinion back a little bit and create the clearance we need for our steering shaft, and also drop the mounts a little bit so that the rack and pinion is comfortably lower than the oil pan. So we're here at the front under the car and you can see what I'm talking about. Here's our rack and pinion and here's our oil pan. And man, it might be even less than 1/8 of an inch what I was originally thinking. So that's not gonna fly. As for this shaft, it could work because if we put a universal right on the end there, half of it will stay sticking up straight and then the whole purpose of the universal is the other one will kind of allow it to flex or droop down where we can clear this top mount. But I don't want to rely on the fact that it may work out. I want to know for sure that it's going to. If I can tilt this whole rack that way, we'll definitely create the clearance that we need for the shaft under that mount. I guess what we could do, the simplest thing would be to shim the bottom of this and not the top, which would kind of kick the rack out on the bottom and clock it up. But I don't know, it's a little bit cheeseball. So what I'm thinking we might have to do is cut these mounts right here off the cross member, being careful not to cut the cross member itself. We'll put an angled cut in it, starting kind of up here and then tapering our way down that way. And what that'll do is allow us to rotate the rack and pinion that way when it's mounted to clear our steering shaft and give us the space that we need. All right, so the first thing we gotta do to get this project underway is get this rack and pinion out of here. All right, so you guys saw what I did. I took the grinder and cut most of the way until I couldn't cut anymore because the cross member was in the way. What I did then is took the Sawzall and then just finished it off that way. And I'm left with these kind of ridges over here where they welded them on. And my default thought was get the grinder and smooth these down, take it down to the same surface as the cross member and start fresh. Until I started playing with this and then I realized, since this is kind of a trapezoidal shape, if you slide these right up in here, they kind of serve as like locator tabs. Even just kind of hold it in there like that. So I think I'm gonna leave them actually, and it gives me a nice little bit of meaty surface to weld to on that side. And it'll center it exactly where I need both pieces to be on each side without any measuring. Okay, so what I did here is I measured 7/8 from the inside of these brackets to my mark, and I measured the same thing on each one of these. Made a mark and then transferred down to the edge to make my bevel cut. And what that'll do is enable me to lean these back and kind of clock that rack and pinion up how we want. All right, guys, before we get welding, I want to show you guys a product that I think is really cool. And I know I'm always showing you guys really expensive stuff, welding machines, plasma cutters, this and that and the other thing. I spoke to a company the other day that sent me a product that's actually really inexpensive and I think is one of the coolest products I've received yet to date here. And it's going to make a really big difference when doing stuff like this. So this is a headlamp by a company called Odelfi. And you guys have all seen headlamps before, nothing special, but this one is really different and I think it's super cool because it has different functions on it. I specifically think it's going to be really handy to put on our welding helmet. It has several functions, and one of them I think is super handy what we're doing, which is a hands-free function. But before we get to that, we'll just go through what it looks like. You've got your on button here, which is this incredibly bright front strip light, which is I like because it's kind of a wide beam and it casts a wider light over what you're working on. If you click it again, it goes down in intensity. It's not as bright. If you click it again, you go to a kind of a spotlight feature, which can kind of give you a pinpoint area to work in. And the same thing, if you click that again, it goes down in intensity. So we'll go back off and now we'll put it back on to the main strip light. Now it's got another button here on the side, which is a sensor button. If you push that, this light changes. Move your hand in front of it, shuts it off. Move your hand again, turns it back on. How handy is that gonna be when you got dirty, greasy hands, you're full of oil, tools maybe, something like that? And this doesn't really convey on camera because it's auto darkening again, but man, this thing is super bright. So we're gonna try this out in a second under the frame where it's dark and see how well it works. When I first started welding, the biggest problem I had was that I couldn't see very well. I just couldn't see the weld puddle, I couldn't see the arc, I couldn't see my seams or my joints where I was welding, and my welds kind of sucked for a while. So I started putting flashlights, magnetic flashlights over my work, tilting them over. That made a huge difference. The only problem with that is that they're right in your field of view. They're kind of hanging over your work when you're welding with the gun. They're just getting in the way. They're getting weld splatter all over them. They're getting affected by heat sometimes. Yeah, that happened. When I saw this, I reached out to them and I said, hey, send me one of these. I really want to try it. I'll try it on the channel and I want to share it with you guys, the viewers, because I think it's really cool. But talk is cheap. Let's get over there under the frame and weld with it and see if it makes a difference. All right, so I just shot some quick primer on there. It's just a flat black so it doesn't rust in the meantime before we get this painted up. Moment of truth, let's get this rack mounted up and see if it makes a difference. All right, so good news and bad news. The good news is that headlamp from Odelfi works awesome. I mean, that is a game changer for me, not to have to mount a flashlight up there when I'm working, especially overhead like that. And it's gonna be really nice even working below, even when I'm on a bench, to not have a flashlight hanging over my workpiece, just be able to have my light where my head is pointing. I can see it being really great for things that are not related to this too, like if you're going camping or something like that. Even if you don't do anything like this and you just, I don't know, walking the dogs at night or something silly like that, really would come in handy, especially having the motion activation. You don't have to have it on all the time if you don't want. I'm sold. I really like it. I'll get to the bad news in a second. If you guys are interested in that light, it is very inexpensive, and they actually offered me a discount code to provide to you guys. So if you're interested, there's a 10% off in the description in this video. Just click on where it says more for the description. If you use my link that I provide, they give me a little bit of a commission. It's, you know, a couple bucks maybe if I'm lucky. So please use that if you guys are interested in the light, and use the discount code. Take advantage of it and save yourself a few bucks. I believe the light is 27 bucks. As I'm filming this, I'm not sure, so I will check it after I'm done and I'll put it on the screen. I'll overlay it what the actual price is. Use the discount code, take advantage of it. I think it's a great product, I really do. So if you guys are in the market for something like that, go for it, grab one. The bad news, I really messed up those rack and pinion mounts, man. If you guys have been following this channel, I told you a long time ago that I'm gonna film my mistakes, my screw ups and all that. I'm not gonna sugarcoat everything and make it look like I just do everything perfect all the time, because I don't, I mess up. What happened was, again, I got a little overconfident, and when I measured those brackets and I put the angle cuts in them, I put too much of an angle on it, and it angled it way up, more than I needed. And what that ends up doing is creating the same problem that I'm trying to avoid by rotating it up so much that it hits the oil pan again. So now, instead of creating a gap from the oil pan, it wouldn't even go into the brackets because it's slamming into the oil pan before I can even mount it all the way in. So my options were cut them off again, which I had really good welds on there. I was very happy with my welds. And they're really a lot thicker welds that were on there to begin with from the factory. So I didn't want to do that. So I had to fabricate new mounts that I welded on top of the old ones and kind of kicked them down a little bit, and then lowered the mounting holes a little bit so that I could create a gap between the oil pan, the rack and pinion, and then I can also still clock it a little bit so that we have the clearance that we need under the engine mounts for the steering shaft. Now, it is where I want it. It is perfect finally, and it worked out really good, but I had to redo everything that you guys just saw me do. Let me take you over there and I'll show you what I'm talking about. All right, so here is the previous mounts that we cut off and then re-welded down lower. And then the angle that I put in it kicked this up really far, and it clocked this, as I was saying, to the point where it's hitting the oil pan. So what I did was I took a new bracket that I fabricated and welded it on down here onto this. I got myself a thicker spacer, which gave me some space that I needed up top, and everything worked out perfectly. I just welded that on there, welded that on there, welded it in the back, and now we're good to go. Same thing on the other side. And then you can kind of see where the shaft comes out right there. Perfect angle for what we need to meet up with the steering shaft, not in the way of this motor mount at all anymore. And we have about a 1/2 inch clearance right here between the cross member, which is plenty. We're a little close to the lower control arm bolts and where our boot is, but still, I think that's enough room. This isn't gonna swing all that much. The tie rod mounts right here, just the tie rod's gonna move a tiny bit that way when the wheel turns in or out. Well guys, that's hot rod, that's how it goes. Sometimes it's not so much about the destination, but about the journey and how you get there and what you learn along the way. And I learned today, again, just like last time, you think what I've learned by now, but sometimes you need to slow down and think about things. And I just took for granted that I knew how much to kick those brackets back and what to make that angle at. And I really should have took a measurement before I cut them. So slow down, think about what you're doing. That's the message for the day. Huge thank you to Odelphi for sending me that headlamp. I really like it, guys. If you want to get one, I can vouch for it. I love it. Good product. Go get yourself one. Use the 10% off in my discount code. If you guys want to see more of this 55 Chevy truck kit build, or if you like the content that you saw today, please consider liking this channel and subscribing because I'm trying to grow it and I really need all the help I can get, guys. Once again, thank you so much for watching. We'll catch you on the next video.